Hello, friends. The 826th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. Friends, due to renewed problems with electricity, as well as expert forecasts that this situation will only get worse, I ask for your help to purchase a charging station with solar panels. With its help, I can be more autonomous and not depend on power outages. You will find collection links under the video and in the pinned comment. Thanks in advance to everyone who responded to my call for help. In the Kharkiv direction, battles are taking place in the urban areas of Vovchansk, where, in the face of a huge number of drones, both sides are using small groups. Ukrainian fighters published footage of attacks on Russian positions in the central part of Staromaiorske. The enemy entrenched himself along Soloviove Street to a depth of 850 meters. Clashes also continue north of Lyptsi. The Russians fire at Ukrainian positions with heavy flamethrower systems. The enemy offensive continues in the Avdiivka direction. Russian troops continue assault operations east of Novooleksandrivka, west of Soloviove and north of Umanske. Under the latter, the enemy has partial success along the forest belt to a depth of 420 meters. The situation in the Vremivka sector indicates increasing pressure from Russian forces. The enemy is carrying out offensive actions at the Staromaiorske, Urozhaine line, demonstrating activity aimed at the desire to restore positions lost during last year's counter-offensive of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. According to data from the Ukrainian side, the Russians gained a foothold west of Staromaiorske and advanced in the central and northern parts of the village in an area up to 2 kilometers wide and to a depth of 700 meters. Continuing attacks carried out by enemy assault groups using tanks show that the enemy is seeking to accelerate the pace of the offensive by expanding control over the village. Certain successes in this direction probably indicate insufficient defense density and problems with reserves in the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Judging by the updated map of the deep state resource, Russian troops control the southern and central parts of Staromaiorske, and the northern outskirts are in the gray zone. The American Institute for the Study of War writes about the same thing. He confirmed the authenticity of the footage, which shows Russian troops advancing into the central part of the village in a mechanized attack of less than a company. The Ukrainian General Staff reported today that, in the Staromaiorske area, the Ukrainian Armed Forces repelled a number of attacks, but did not confirm the Russian advance. In Urozhaine, the Russians press forward with great effort, but even here they have minor successes. Enemy units are trying to move north, but soldiers of the Ukrainian Armed Forces are fighting for every meter. Perhaps, in addition to restoring lost positions, the Russians will try to develop an offensive further to the north, at the junction of the Donetsk and Zaporizhia regions, in order to go to the rear and create a threat from the flanks of the Ukrainian troops operating on the front line from Vuhledar to Krasnohorivka near Donetsk. But this requires covering a long distance, and the pace of Russia's offensive in the south is currently slow. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian military says that despite American aid, the Russians still have a significant advantage in artillery and aviation. This was stated by officer of the Rubish Brigade of the National Guard Kozyubenko. The advantage is in artillery, aviation and technology in general, because, unfortunately, they have a sufficient amount of old Soviet resources. Plus, they have two suppliers, Iran and North Korea, who supply both weapons and ammunition for them, said Kozyubenko. Podolyak, advisor to the head of the presidential office, also said in an interview with Bloomberg that the Russians have an absolute advantage in shells and missiles. He also stated the dominance of Russian tactical aviation, which bombs the positions of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. In his opinion, to suppress this aircraft, at least 60 Western fighters are needed, and ideally 100 to 120. Podolyak believes that Russia is trying to seize as much territory as possible in order to force the West and Ukraine to agree to freeze the war until Western weapons arrive. At the same time, he called the option of stopping the war along the front line an unacceptable condition. Ukrainian Armed Forces fighters criticized American Abrams tanks in a CNN report. The military spoke about a number of weaknesses and shortcomings of armored vehicles, questioning their usefulness at the front. Its armor is not enough at the moment. It doesn't protect the crew. Really, today it's a drone war. So now when a tank rolls out, they always try to shoot it down, said one of the crew members with the call sign Joker. His colleague added that Abrams is the #1 target. One of the problems is that they are supplied to Ukraine without dynamic protection. The crew showed CNN their efforts to install active armor on one damaged tank. They used plastic explosive plates that, when hit by a projectile, detonate and provide a protective response explosion. The Ukrainian crew expressed disappointment that the tanks were designed for NATO-style warfare, in which aircraft and artillery prepare the battlefield before tanks and infantry attack. We don't have aviation or artillery, we only have a tank, and that's a problem, Joker said. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.